After years of following leads and searching for answers, Arlington police believe they have finally found the person responsible for a murder in 2012. Scoop Jefferson just heard.
For 14 years, a family in Arlington, Texas asked the same question every single day. Who did this to her? They had a date. They had a name. Hers. What they didn't have was an answer. Somewhere in that city, someone carried a secret through birthdays, holidays, vacations, an entire life, while one family kept waiting for the truth to catch up. Welcome to Time Reveal. Irasema Chavez wasn't originally from Texas. She'd grown up in Mexico, and when the chance came to start fresh in the United States, she didn't hesitate. Her sister and brother-in-law had already made the move to Arlington, and Irasema followed, drawn by the pull of wanting to be near family in a new country. She adjusted quickly. She made friends fast, built a wide circle of people around her, and loved going out dancing with them, the kind of person who filled a room rather than faded into it. Not long before her death, she took another step that takes its own kind of courage. She came out to her family and friends as a lesbian, choosing to be fully known by the people closest to her, in a country she'd chosen for herself only a few years earlier. That closeness with her family was the rhythm of her daily life. In January of 2012, her niece, a teenager, had traveled from Mexico to spend time with family in Texas. On the night of January 19th, Irasema called her sister, wanting company, asking her sister and her niece to come over. It was late, and her sister didn't want to make the drive at that hour, so they made a plan instead. A small, ordinary compromise, the kind families make every day without a second thought. The niece would come by the following morning, and the two of them would spend the day together. The next morning, her sister kept her end of the plan. She drove her niece to the Aspenwood Apartments on South Collins Street, and waited outside until she saw the teenager get in safely. That's what a parent does. You wait until the door closes behind them, treating an ordinary Friday morning with the same quiet care as any other day. It's a small, protective habit that, on any other day, would have meant nothing at all. On this day, it meant Irasema's sister was still sitting outside, in her car, when everything changed. The niece walked up to the apartment, expecting to spend the day with her aunt. Instead, within a minute of stepping inside, she came running back out. Years later, speaking to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram about that morning, she described the scene in 7 words that say more than any narration could. Everything was stained, soaked with blood. Officers were called to the apartment at approximately 8:51 that morning. When they arrived, they found Irasema unresponsive inside. She was pronounced dead at the scene. We won't go further into the physical details of what officers found. What matters is that whatever happened had happened to a woman who, hours earlier, had been making weekend plans with her family, and that the person who discovered her was a teenager who had simply come to spend the day with her aunt. Officers processing the scene were confronted with a detail that would shape the entire investigation to come. There was no forced entry. No broken door, no shattered window, nothing suggesting Irasema had fought to keep someone out, which meant investigators were left with a harder possibility. She'd let this person in herself. That told police, almost immediately, that this likely wasn't a stranger. It was someone Irasema knew, someone she felt safe enough to open her door for. At the time, investigators didn't have a name to attach to that theory. What they did have was surveillance footage from the night before, showing a figure in a hoodie and loose clothing climbing the stairs toward Irasema's apartment, the strongest lead they had. Police released that footage publicly in the weeks after the murder, hoping someone in the community would recognize the person walking up those stairs. Nobody came forward with a name. Crime scene investigators also recovered a single drop of fresh blood on a bedroom TV stand, blood that didn't belong to Irasema. It was tested and run through CODIS, the national database used to match unknown DNA to known offenders. It came back with no match. All the lab could confirm was that the blood belonged to a Hispanic woman. No name, no face, just a fragment of an answer with nothing to attach it to. That gap between having evidence and having the tools to use it is exactly what kept this case unsolved for over a decade, and it shook the surrounding Arlington community, which watched a young woman's murder go unanswered year after year. What police did eventually establish is that the person whose blood was left behind wasn't a stranger to Irasema at all. According to Arlington police, she was, in the department's own words, at one time a close friend of Irasema's, someone who had been inside that apartment before, someone who lived only a few miles away. Her name was Mayra Velasquez. At the time of the murder, she was 27 years old, working as a real estate agent in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Photographs exist from that period of the two women together, consistent with what police would later confirm. This was someone Irasema had welcomed into her life and into her home. That fact reframes everything about that morning. Whatever happened inside that apartment happened between two people who, by every account available, knew each other well, which raises the one question this case still can't fully answer. If they were close, what happened between them? Investigators have been direct about this. A motive has not been established, not by police, and not in any court filing made public to date. We won't guess at it here, because nobody with access to the actual evidence has said it publicly. If this is the kind of forensic, deeply researched true crime documentary you come back for, go ahead and subscribe. We dig into cases exactly like this one on a regular basis. For a while, the investigation moved the way investigations do right after a murder. Quickly, urgently, with detectives chasing every lead they had. As the months turned into years, Arlington police didn't abandon the case, but they ran out of new leads to chase. At one point, investigators brought in Parabon Nanolabs, a company that builds DNA-based composite images of unknown suspects using genetic markers. It didn't generate anything usable. This is the part of cold cases that rarely makes headlines. The years where a case simply waits, not forgotten, not actively worked every day, just waiting for a new witness, a new tip, or new technology to catch up to it. For Irasema's case, that wait lasted 12 years. In that stretch, Mayra Velasquez was living an entirely different kind of life. She kept working as a real estate agent, got married, and had children. Her public social media, reviewed by multiple news outlets since her arrest, shows her smiling in photos from trips to Peru, Mexico, Paris, and London. The documentation of a life moving forward, with no indication she was hiding or running from anything. That stretch ended in November of 2024, when Arlington's homicide unit sat down with the FBI's Dallas field office to discuss a relatively new investigative tool called Investigative Genetic Genealogy, or IgG. A standard CODIS search only works if unknown DNA matches someone already in a criminal database. IgG works differently. It compares crime scene DNA against public genealogy databases, the kind people use to research their own family trees, looking for partial matches to relatives, then works backward, branch by branch, narrowing a family tree down until one name emerges as the most likely match. FBI Dallas Special Agent in Charge Joe Rothrock later described just how demanding that process really is, explaining that it starts with nothing more than an unknown DNA sample recovered from a scene and requires investigators to work through each branch of a family tree, one relative at a time, until the pool of possible suspects narrows enough to identify one likely name. The FBI's team took on Irasema's case in late 2024 and spent well over a year doing exactly that, before, in April of 2026, they came back to Arlington detectives with a name, Mayra Velasquez. A genealogy match isn't proof by itself. It's a strong lead, not something you can walk into a courtroom with on its own. Investigators needed a direct, present-day DNA sample from Velasquez to compare against the 14-year-old blood. Getting it meant watching her without her knowledge. In May of 2026, undercover officers began observing Velasquez, following her to a local restaurant where she sat down for lunch with friends, the way she'd likely done hundreds of times before without a second thought. When she left, officers moved in, not toward her, but toward what she'd left behind. 2 plastic forks, a plate, a cup. The discarded remains of an ordinary lunch became the most important physical evidence in a 14-year-old murder case. That DNA went to a crime lab and was compared directly against the blood recovered from the TV stand in Irasema's bedroom back in 2012. It matched. On the strength of that match, Arlington police obtained a warrant for Velasquez's arrest. Detectives from the department's fugitive unit, violent crime unit, and covert investigations unit worked together to locate her, tracking her to the city of Hearst, just outside Arlington. When officers moved in, Velasquez was taken into custody without incident. No struggle, no attempt to flee. For a woman who had spent 14 years building a career, a marriage, and a family in plain sight, the arrest itself was quiet. She was booked into custody and charged with capital murder, then transferred to the Tarrant County Jail, where she has since been held without bond. Days later, Arlington Police Chief Al Jones and Detective Tracy Dixon stood before reporters to walk through exactly how the case had finally broken open. Jones didn't hide how the department felt about the work it took to get there. "I am extremely proud of the work that our officers and crime scene investigators did on this case," he said. "They showed tenacity and dedication and never gave up." Dixon, the lead homicide detective, was asked directly whether police believed they had the right person in custody. Her answer was immediate: yes. But it was a different question, one about the family, not the evidence, that visibly caught her off guard. Asked about the moment she told Irasema's relatives the case had finally been solved, Dixon's composure slipped. "Being able to share that with a family is why we do this," she said, her voice breaking, before describing what that moment means to everyone who touches a case like this. Investigators, crime scene technicians, the FBI's genealogy team alike, saying they all feel that elation when it's solved, alongside the pain for the family. It's a reminder of something easy to forget while watching cases like this unfold from the outside. Solving a 14-year-old murder isn't just closing a file. It's a phone call to people who have been waiting since before some of them can remember not waiting. If a moment like that stays with you the way it stayed with us while researching this one, let us know in the comments which part of this case affected you most. We read all of them. In the days following the arrest, a fuller picture of Velasquez's life over the previous 14 years surfaced through public records and her own social media, not new police statements. She had continued working as a licensed real estate agent, most recently with Pure Realtors LLC, holding an active Texas license. One work acquaintance told reporters she seemed like a kind, family-oriented person who had recorded millions of dollars in real estate sales and regularly traveled internationally to visit family, and said she was shocked by the arrest, believing anyone who knew Velasquez would feel the same. Velasquez's attorney, Dustin Hoffman of the Sellers law firm, spoke on her behalf shortly after her arrest, stating plainly, "What I can tell you right now is that Ms. Velasquez, Myra, is completely innocent of this." As of the most recent available reporting, no trial date has been set, and Detective Dixon has said additional evidence, including Irasema's cell phone records, is being held for trial rather than discussed publicly. This case is also part of a much larger pattern for Arlington's homicide unit, which has now solved somewhere between 13 and 14 cold cases using this same combination of patience and forensic technology. A track record that speaks to just how many families in that city have been waiting, in the same way Irasema's family waited, for a name they thought might never come. That leaves this particular case in an unusual place. We know how Irasema died. We know, according to DNA evidence, who prosecutors believe was responsible. What we still don't know, What investigators themselves have not established is why. What happens between two people once close enough to be welcomed into each other's homes that ends with one of them gone and the other going on to build 14 years of a life that looked, from the outside, untouched? That question doesn't have a verified answer yet. It may not until, and unless, this case reaches a courtroom. Before you go, we want to know what you think. Do you believe someone can be genuinely close to another person and still be capable of something like this? And if the people who knew Mayra Velasquez best had no idea, what does that tell us about how well we really know anyone? Drop your thoughts below. This is Time Reveal, and we'll be back with the next case soon.